people are realizing that the way we build conventionally just doesn't work anymore. It's too expensive, it's too slow, and it just doesn't work. And so they're looking for different solutions.
There seems to be a backlash in the United States against sustainable energy and sustainable projects, which is not happening in the rest of the world.
Welcome back to another episode of Advisor AI Solutions. I'm your host, Jordan Salvador, and today I'm thrilled to sit down with three powerhouse minds shaping how we build, think, and lead in a rapidly changing world. Welcome Tim Sweeney, Tim Lorang, and James Croft.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining me today. Where are you guys calling in from today?
I'm in Reno, Nevada.
I'm in Sacramento, California.
And I'm in Tirana, Albania.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
In today's environment, you can work anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
Isn't that just one of the coolest things ever, right? You know, 5 years ago, probably this would not be happening. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys, especially on a Sunday to carve out some time out of your guys' busy days. Okay, so maybe we'll start with Tim S. Do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself as a role with Simplus Systems and maybe some quick background about the company?
Well, I'm a longtime architect, coming from a traditional background of doing both public works, schools, universities, single family and multifamily residential. But I've also been a general contractor. I've been involved in the magnesium oxide panel business since 2008. I'm now, as of a couple of years ago, both a passive house designer and a tradesperson certified by the International Passive House Association.
That's terrific. So what kind of inspired you to get into the passive house design side of things?
Well, I had always been, call it energy and sustainability minded. My college days were just after the oil embargo, and so in college I was very much into what was then passive solar and active solar. And unfortunately, the economy, the governments got rid of all the tax credits, similar to what's happening right now back in that era. And so I come from a long interest of being involved in more energy efficient design. But then I heard about passive house design and how it's really a lot more efficient. And I inquired, I took the training, and as I was told by one of the instructors, once you can't go back because you know the better way of doing things and you can't bring yourself to do it wrong again. So it's really at my core nowadays.
I love to hear that. That's terrific. We've had several guests on our show so far who have jumped into that side of things and absolutely love it. My next question is for Tim L. Tim, yes. I know, maybe share a little bit about your background, but then I'd love to just ask you a question about your entry point into the mission and how did your global perspective shape your approach to smarter, more resilient building?
Well, one of the things, I just wanted to first say that I've known Tim Sweeney since we were both in college, but then our conversations about agriculture or architecture were more about Brunelleschi, who didn't design passive houses. But yeah, so one of the things, my background is from television and communications and that area, and I've been working with Tim to help him and James, with the message and getting the word out. But one of the things that I've noticed is, especially I've been traveling around Europe for the last 3 years, and there's a completely different attitude over here about, housing and embracing things like solar energy and wind power. I was in Turkey, for example. Practically in every street corner in Turkey, you could buy a solar panel and put it on your house. I met and had breakfast with an executive for one of the companies that makes the windmills, and the wind-powered energy is becoming one of the most pervasive form of passive energy production in places like Turkey. So these places embrace it wholeheartedly, and so it's interesting to see different perspectives and a different mindset, than we're often running into in the United States. So.
Absolutely, and I understand in North America there is a uptick in trend towards sustainability and more efficiency. But in your mind, Tim, what do you think the biggest difference is, and what do you think could help grow that innovation and acceptance in North America?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, without getting too far into different political systems or anything, there seems to be a backlash in the United States against sustainable energy and sustainable projects, which is not happening, in the rest of the world. And so I think, part of it is just an attitude. And I also think that, I think things like when you say, green or sustainable, people get an idea that, okay, we're a bunch of hippies running around saying, hug trees and love things. But the thing is that what we're trying to do is, yes, it's sustainable, but it's going to save you a lot of money in the long run. Energy costs go down by 90%. Because we're doing it prefabricated, it's a lot faster, construction. And then it's just safer to live in. They don't burn down, and because of the Passive House regulations, like during a fire, it doesn't let smoke in.
Right.
A lot of the buildings in Los Angeles that survived the fire, for example, are uninhabitable because of the smoke has just made them unlivable. There's carcinogens and formaldehyde and all sorts of stuff in there. That is all prevented if you build according to Passive House designs. So I think that people just have the wrong idea about what it is and what we're trying to achieve.
That's amazing. That's one thing I did know is that passive housing is low to non-toxic, but didn't realize the effects of actually when something burns down, the carcinogenic residuals that are left over. So that I commend you guys. That's absolutely amazing. James, this one's for you. Of course, once again, please share a bit about your background. But what in your mind has Simplus Systems standing out from the crowd?
Thank you for that question. To respond, my background, I kind of grew up in the trades. My father was a master carpenter, so I learned at an early age, how to start building things the old traditional sticks and bricks way. Fast forward to the early 2000s, I actually moved out to the West Coast to work with Tim, and as my mentor and guiding light. And from that, I've been an architectural project manager. I've been a general contractor. I've owned my own framing company, and I've managed wall panel and truss fabrication facilities. So I'm kind of the nuts and bolts guys. I like to get into the technical details, and all the ideas that we put forth, I really want to make them practical, applicable, and reasonable, so that the sustainability is real. And in that regard, how does Simplus stand out? we take a holistic kind of view of the entire process from design, construction and occupancy. And we bring that holistic approach into our design methodology with Passive House. We utilize the prefabricated methodologies with SIPS panels, with roof trusses, with CLT, with whatever kind of prefab elements we can bring into the whole equation. And we also look at things from a holistic systems perspective. It's the building envelope, it's the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, and how do all of those work together to create a quality built environment. And I think that holistic approach and our skill set across the board is what sets us apart. We can design and build a structure that has great life cycle costing, a good return on investment, and hopefully doesn't break the bank. And our next goal is to work on the affordability portion of it, so we can bring that to the masses.
That's absolutely phenomenal, James. Having such a strong team with different perspectives really enables you to tackle all kinds of different issues and address them from a 360 point of view. So that's awesome. What would you say, if someone was looking to take step in one of your guys' projects, where can you guys be found?
We have a website, simplussystems.com. Tim actually also has, sweeneyarchitecture.com. So we basically can tie both the design and the build together. Tim is kind of like the point person on the front end, and basically he can introduce someone to the system and how we work, and basically bring them into the nest of this of the Simplus family.
That's terrific. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Tim S., from a tech strategy side, what would you say that one of the biggest trends in the industry that you might be noticing coming into play?
Well, as far as trends go, there's several things that are happening. Prefabrication is a big focus. People are realizing that the way we build conventionally just doesn't work anymore. It's too expensive, it's too slow, it doesn't have the thermal or vapor control properties that it should have, and it just doesn't work. And so they're looking for different solutions. One of the solutions people look at is modular. Modular is a good way of building. It has its own drawbacks. Often it's still wood stick framed, so they're just taking the field framing and taking that more labor intensive, expensive way of building and putting it into a factory, which does have its own efficiencies, but it's still often just stick framing. Or if they're using steel framing, then it has, energy problems with thermal bridging often. Beyond modular, there's other ways of doing prefabrication, and that's where we come in, which is panelization, where we basically believe that panels get you the most bang for the buck, because you can get more panels stacked flat onto a truck and delivered to the job site and go up so quickly that you can avoid all of those delays that come on the modular side when they are making you basically lock in your design before it's ready so that they can get into fabrication, whereas we design to completion, fabricate panels very quickly, and get them to the job site quickly on a truck. And yes, there is a little bit more labor, but it's still, in our mind, a much more efficient way of building. And really, that's efficiency is the key word that we bring to all of our projects in many different ways. Now, besides prefabrication, there's also various ways of building that are more green in nature, such as organic materials, hemp, straw, cork, various other, even mycelium, various different materials that are being developed to take the place of other materials that are more expensive and maybe can be produced eventually more efficiently and rapidly and economically and with less impact on the environment. However, to date, all of those other more organic ways of building still involve either too much time or too much labor, or they don't have the structural properties that are needed to be used in like our kind of building, which is panelized, where we factory assemble panels and they need to have a structural integrity. But beyond that, you basically are faced with just conventional construction. The masonry people are trying to say that they're sustainable. Well, they have their own embodied carbon problems. The metal people are trying to do the same with their own problems. It happens to be that our system has 50% less embodied carbon compared to even stick framing, which is the most, seen as the most green system. It's not really. Cutting down trees is not the answer to controlling carbon in the environment. So let me ask Tim Lorang and James, do you have any other things to add to those trends?
I'll add on to that. I think with the design side, BIM and 3D modeling has become so advanced that we can do not only the structural analysis, the energy analysis, and we can basically design all the systems way in advance. So that trend in almost all, building systems is invaluable nowadays because we get that early and advanced buy-in and technical detailing and coordination, and that is an absolute time saving on almost all projects. That to me is a trend that it's ever evolving and an absolute must when we talk about sustainability and green building.
So one example that is often given is that the way we build houses now is like if you wanted to a new car and you built a new car in your driveway, sourcing out from 40 different suppliers, and it's not an efficient way to build a car, and it's not an efficient way to build a house.
Hearing from all three of you guys, having your different perspectives, and then coming together and becoming cohesive and having that so well thought out from from design, from materials, and then from delivering it. That's awesome, and I commend you guys for that. So maybe this one can I ask James. As far as advances in technology, being able to design, but as far as growing as a company, what would you say your guys' biggest struggles or bottlenecks you guys are facing in today's industry and market?
I think the challenge that we face currently is the markets that we are kind of being drawn into are relatively remote. So like, as we discussed, our locations, Reno, Sacramento, and Albania, are kind of remote from like LA, which has got a big demand on their infrastructure needs. So that puts a little bit of a burden on us from an operations perspective, when you need to get boots on the ground, and how do we manage that? Even though remote work is becoming more and more common, there's still a management side to it, kind of an overhead burden that we have to deal with. But other than that, I think our, like any business, just getting the word out, getting some brand recognition, having people come and see our builds and see what we can do, and getting historical data put together on energy performance and actual costs, soft and hard, and that is just going to take time, and once that happens, our brand recognition will increase, and we can, expand and grow as needed.
That's terrific. I love the efforts and hard work you guys are putting in. Um, this one's for Tim
Can I,
L.
can,
Yep.
can I add to that?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but I think one of the other bottlenecks is just is the permitting. Actually, is the permitting. Right now there is no national code. Everything is local. Every locality has different codes. Every state has different codes. So navigating all of that. The other thing is that most of the codes were written before they were written for stick home construction. They weren't written for what we were doing, and so we're doing a new process, a new way of doing it, and the people who are regulating, who are giving, passing and giving us permission to do it, don't understand what we're doing. So they need to be trained, and they need to come up to speed about what is capable of happening in this environment. And I mean, besides just the normal, it takes sometimes it takes longer to permit a building than it takes to build it. But add on to it the new requirements and the new things that we're bringing to the table, it just goes slower. And so that's a bottleneck for us also.
Right. And then that's interesting you bring that up, Tim, because through these different interviews on these episodes of podcasts, speaking with different thought leaders, material suppliers, developers, being from different geographical states and countries, even sometimes you get a positive response when you ask that question. As far as policies and regulations and codes go, some places are a little bit looser, some are tightening up. But yeah, that must be really difficult to navigate. And then on top of that, it seems like having some kind of resource to educate or inform these different regulatory bodies would be something that would be super helpful in the industry. It would appear. Questions for? Sorry, Tim. What was that?
No, go on.
Okay. So this question might be for. Let's go with Tim S. Tim, let's fast forward. 2 years from now, where would you imagine Simplus to be? Like, what would you, if something were to change, what would you have done?
Well, first of all, there's going to be clones of us because there's only so much that we can accomplish. And so since we have this so highly efficient system, it is going to be more and more recognized and adopted. And both architects and contractors and developers and manufacturing companies are going to see that integrating the most efficient way of designing passive house with the most efficient way of building magnesium oxide panels that are non-combustible, and with the passive house we have smoke-free, is really the answer that people need. It's efficient, which makes it economical, and it's fast, and all of these other benefits that we can bring, labor savings. People are looking for answers, and so there will be more of us, and this Simplus system, both in its proprietary patented form and more importantly in this generic form, will become more of the mainstay way of building because it works, because it is affordable, because it answers the question of how do we get back to where people can be housed and have buildings that are not so expensive.
I love that. Okay. So this is just, before we wrap up here, I just have a couple questions that we ask all of our guests that appear on our show. So this one, feel free to take turns answering. But if you guys weren't doing what you're doing now with Simplus, what do you guys think you would be doing?
I'll jump in and say, I can't think of doing anything else. Look at the gray hair. This is my life, but I love traveling, and I'd be over visiting Tim Lorang and reliving my senior year in architecture over in Florence, Italy, where I met Tim, and just enjoying the world
Oh,
and
that's
encouraging other
terrific.
people to be more sustainable, because whether you like the word or not, efficiency is at the heart of it, and efficiency gets rid of a lot of those problems for the environment. So yeah, that's where I'd be.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Tim.
Um, where I would be, well, I would probably be, bumming around Europe like I am right now. But I would be spending more days walking, in the park and, um, sipping Aperol spritzes in sidewalk cafes and things like that. But I'm grateful. Actually, I'm excited about doing something. I think that what Tim Sweeney is doing in the mission of Simplus systems is important, and I'm glad to give up a few Aperol spritzes, to achieve that.
There's nothing wrong with a good Aperol spritz, Tim.
Yeah.
My turn. For me, if I weren't doing what I was doing right now, I would probably be teaching. I find it very fulfilling, especially like in dealing with my children and their friends, trying to teach them how, specifically in the construction industry, how to make things better, and how to do real estate investment and land development and those kind of things. And for me to teach them what I've learned over the last many decades, and giving them kind of a leg up on what they need to do to enhance their careers, that teaching aspect and bringing up the next generation to replace us is a big part of what fulfills me.
Absolutely. This is just a start, right? We have to look after the future, and more importantly. Okay, so this one's, for all of you guys, feel free to jump in. But is there one thing today that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with our listeners, whether it's an idea, a resource, or a challenge?
I'd like to say, first of all, thank you, Jordan, for having us on your show, because really it's making people aware of alternatives, that they're not saddled with the problems that they have today. They do have alternatives, but learning what those alternatives are is really what is needed. And so it's an information campaign, and you're going to hopefully go a long ways to helping in that. But I think there's a lot of different problems with the way buildings are designed and built today. But people, if they can learn the alternatives, then there's a brighter future. And it doesn't have to be branded as sustainable. It just has to be recognized as being efficient.
The one point that I would like to make is we're at a point in our history and our society. There's lots of things that are breaking down. For example, just the fires and the number of homes that are being destroyed. On the West Coast in Hawaii, but in other places, hurricanes, flooding. We have an opportunity to build back better. We should not be replacing the new with the old. We should be doing a better job, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be more expensive, but it has to be better than what was there before.
Certainly.
I'll dovetail off what Tim Lorang just said. I think this perception that green and sustainable is so much more expensive is a bit of a myth. Yeah, there are some front end cost associated with it, but when you really get down to the nuts and bolts and life cycle costs, you can actually save money on these structures and have a better return on your investment. So it's not only good for the owners, it's good for the occupants, it's good for the environment, it's good for the agencies, it's good for everyone across the board. And it's only a matter of time when all of these sustainable requirements are just going to be par for the course. So I would say everybody needs to get on board or get left behind, because it's the wave of the future. So
You're absolutely right. All three of you guys, and when it comes to talking about efficiencies and cost savings, ultimately, what is the cost of inaction at the same point, right? But gentlemen, this was absolutely inspiring. From technology and construction to ethics and purpose, you guys have given us a real masterclass. And I thank you guys once again for jumping on our show today.
Okay, well, thank
Our
you for
pleasure.
having us.
Thank you very much,
I
Jordan.
appreciate the time.
Great, thank you.